Aloha and welcome to Wind in Her Hair. I'm Anna, your host, and today is a solo episode all about situationships. And that is because a guy almost put me in a waiting room recently. And in my 20s, I would have sat down. But at 49, I walked right out. I saw right through the BS, and it's so interesting how people try and get away with it and they're creative with their words. But when you become educated and you recondition your nervous system, like I said, you see right through that BS. I'm not going to tolerate it. So let me explain the story to you briefly. Met this guy recently and thought it would be a good opportunity to create a jam session. I write and play country music, and I'm always looking for somebody to jam with and practice my songs, preferably somebody who's a better musician than I am. And so we had a jam session. And I know this person for maybe 2 hours. And I said, you're 34 years old. I'm 49. It's not going to happen. And he said, let's just have fun. Like, we're both looking for our forever person. I don't think by us hanging out, we're going to get into each other's way of our goals. I was like, are you serious? There's no future with you. I'm not going to waste my most precious asset, which is time. And he said, you just need to have some fun, Anna. And I said, if your version of fun is hooking up or hanging out, I'm 49. I've been through the gauntlet. I've been there, done that. I've learned my lessons. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not signing up for that. Time waster. Plus, when you throw kids into the mix, it changes the dynamic immensely. So I just thought it was interesting. In my 20s, I probably would have entertained that idea. But now I didn't even entertain it for 1 second. I was like, this is wild. He tried to get me to just have some fun until our forever people came along. And I was like, are you serious? The point is, I don't want to be with somebody who says, let's just see where it's going. I want to be with somebody who says, I know where I'm going, and I would like to invite you along to be a part of this with me, be a part of a relationship. So I want to ask you something. When was the last time you were actually in something, a relationship, fully defined from the start? I mean, think about it. How many of you have been in a relationship where it's been fully defined from the start, where you actually have big girl and big boy conversations and you use your words and you say, this is what I'd like out of the relationship? So this episode is about the conditioning of situationships, not just the relationship dynamic. How we got conditioned to accept breadcrumbs. So if you don't know what breadcrumbing is, that's when somebody drops little nuggets of attention and validation and affection, just little bits at a time. You're not giving them a full meal. You're just giving them little crumbs of bread, enough so they're not totally starving, enough that they stay in the game, that they get lured into your life, but not enough to have a full, meaningful, satisfying relationship. And so our dating app culture, social media, scarcity mindset, and mistaking inconsistency for mystery. Think about that. When you're inconsistent, people can see that as you're mysterious, but that's not the case. And then the normalization loop, how we normalize it and we get stuck in these loops that waste our time and drain our energy. So what actually makes it a situationship versus a relationship that's still trying to find its footing? I want to read this to you because I think it's going to be really helpful. So in a real relationship that's still forming, the lack of a label is normal. Two people just haven't gotten there yet, but they're not avoiding it. They're building towards it. Now, in a situationship, the ambiguity isn't an accident of timing, it's the mechanism. So ambiguity is the mechanism in a situationship. Staying undefined is what lets one person keep the benefits So the attention, the intimacy, the access to you without the responsibility. The vagueness isn't a phase they're passing through, it's the whole strategy. These people are vague on purpose. That's the distinction. We haven't defined this yet, they say. A temporary state on the way somewhere. Or is it the permanent, comfortable place someone intends to stay? And then instead of asking, are we official? You look at the direction effort is moving over time. This is important. In a relationship in progress, texting gets more consistent, plans get made further in advance. You meet more of their people, they bring up the future more, the line trends up. In a situationship, effort stays flat, or worse, it dips the second you get comfortable. Same energy in month 4 as month 1. No progression, no expansion, just repetition. Is this you? Are you in a situationship? So don't listen to what they call it. Watch whether the ambiguity is moving toward clarity or sitting still on purpose, and let the trend line of their effort tell you which one it is. So that's the difference between a situationship and a relationship. The real reasons we settle: fear of rejection, and it's usually dressed up as keeping things casual. People are really afraid of rejection, and instead of dealing with it and healing in it and dealing with shadow work, they just keep things casual. And it's a defense mechanism they may not even know that they're using. Low self-worth disguised as, I don't need labels. I had another guy on Instagram who reached out a while ago and said, do you want to break bread? I was like, really? Seriously? This is how you're going to ask me out on a date? You don't even have the balls to say, hey, Anna, I would love to get to know you more. Can I take you out to dinner? He said, let's break bread. And I was like, oh, this guy, I know this type. Huge ego, huge fear of rejection. Instead of putting it out there and being brave, he wants to throw out phrases out there like, let's break bread, just to come across as casual and cool and avoid rejection. Avoidance of real intimacy. These are the dismissive avoidance. In case you don't know what the attachment styles is, that's one of the styles. If they keep it undefined, it means there's no accountability. And the sunk cost fallacy, meaning they've already invested so much. It's already been 3 months, 6 months. I've already invested so much money, time, and effort. Like, it's kind of too late to turn back. That's bullshit. It's never too late. And I always tell people, break up sooner. You don't want to break up because you might hurt their feelings. You're going to hurt their feelings even worse 3 months down the road when they've already invested so much more. It's better to break up sooner than later. Let's go over the self-deception checklist for those of you who think you might possibly be in a situationship. So you find yourself rehearsing the what are we conversation, but never saying it. You begin making excuses for their inconsistent effort, or maybe you're the one who is being inconsistent. And you're hoping maybe they won't say anything, that they'll just go along for the ride. Calling crumbs a snack, again, back to breadcrumbing. You see the breadcrumbs, the little tiny bits of intermittent attention. It's a snack, it's not a meal. Anxious or relieved reaction to small gestures. That's a scarcity tell. So, anxious, relieved reaction to small gestures. For example, this guy told me this story recently about this girl who went onto Instagram and said her belief in men has been regained because some guy helps fix a flat tire. And I was just like, oh, girl, your standards are too low. If your belief is fixed because some guy fixed your flat tire, girl, you got to raise your standards. We should be expecting so much more out of men and vice versa. And then avoiding the direct question because you already suspect the answer. Maybe you feel like you're in a situationship and you don't even want to ask, hey, are we in a relationship? Are we committed to each other? Are you seeing somebody else? Are you talking to somebody else? Because we kind of already know the answer and we don't want to hear it. So we think it's better just to stay in the gray zone until what? I don't know, until they break your heart, until they block you, until they move on to somebody else. Downgrading your own standards to match their effort. This is a sign that you have some work to do in your mindset regarding your identity and your self-worth. 100%. Never downgrade your own standards to match their effort. Let them go and wait for a person you're aligned with that already matches your effort. What it actually takes to get clarity. This is the next step. If you're in a situationship, you need to get clarity. You have to be willing to lose the situationship to gain the truth. Think about this. You're wasting your precious time, your most precious asset. You're investing into someone, clearly you know, and you don't want to admit it, is not investing in you. Somebody who's not willing to make a commitment, someone who's inconsistent, they're breadcrumbing you. Really, that's a sign of immaturity, and their ego is a little too big. You've got to separate the fantasy of who they could be, that's dating their potential, from evidence of who they're showing up as right now. And I always tell people, my clients, you're dating a fantasy of who they could be. That's dating their potential. Well, you've got to look at their patterns and not listen to the promises. Look at how they're showing up now with their time, with their effort, with their attention, with the way that they treat other people. That is your answer. That's your information. That's your data that you need to use to make a calculated, mature, wise decision. This is what it takes to get clarity. You need to sit with discomfort instead of filling the silence with hope. Meaning, you might have to ask the good question, have the hard conversation, and it's going to risk you having to sit with discomfort. Maybe they say to you, I'm not looking for a relationship right now. Just so you know, when they say I'm not dating or I'm not looking for a relationship, that just means you're not the one for them or you're not their type. I tell people that all the time. When men ask me out on a date, I say I'm not dating, and that's clearly because, and sorry if you've been one of these guys, you're not my type. It's just you're just not. So if they say I'm not dating, you're not their type, and they're just trying to let you down easy. So you've got to be able to get to the point where you're willing to sit with discomfort for a little while so that you can get the clarity, get the answer, move on out of a situationship because you are worth so much more than that, versus trying to fill the silence, the lack of information, the lack of answer, the lack of commitment with hope. Maybe one day, if I'm enough, if I do this, if I say that, if I go here, if I become that, they will commit. No. If they haven't committed yet, they'll never commit. And then another way to get clarity is having the conversation before time or investment goes in. Like, you could have been working on yourself, being alone, and being ready and available for the right person to come your way. But if you are holding on to somebody when you know in your gut something is off and they're not the right person, I mean, I'm a Christian. I believe that God knows who we're supposed to be with and he has the right people for us, but we need to be prepared. We can't just be drifting through life, not paying attention, doing our own thing, not being intentional with our time, our energy, our finances, all the things, and just expect to attract these high value first round draft picks when we're not one ourselves. If you want to attract a high value first round draft pick, you've got to become one. That means have the mindset of every day I am working towards any sort of healing that has to be done and preparing to walk into a healthy, aligned relationship. And if you can't walk into a healthy, aligned relationship right now, you should be alone. You should be working on yourself, building your business, your career, your finances, your fitness, your emotional intelligence, your emotional regulation, working on your attachment style, working through shadow work. That means eliminating any core wounds, childhood wounds that you're going to take into the next relationship that will only make it harder. And you're both going to suffer if you are not aware of these things and learn how to deal with them. There's a framework and a script for asking the direct question. Dun, dun, dun. The ask. I want to be honest about where I'm at. I'm looking for something real and defined. Where do you see this going? Oh my goodness, my heart. I'm nervous. I've got the butterflies. I can already feel nervous for you because this is a big question. You're going to have to be vulnerable, but this is the absolute best thing that you can do for yourself. Not only will you build the confidence to be able to step up to the plate and ask hard questions, but you're going to get clarity. And then you're going to get your answer, and then you're going to be able to move on. Most likely, if you have to ask this question, you're in a situationship and that person does not see where it's going. So again, I want to be honest about where I'm at. I am where I'm at, not where we're at. Where I'm at. I am looking for something real or meaningful and defined. Where do you see this going? If they stutter, they kind of hem and haw, you have your answer. And it's important to read the answer, not the excuse. You've got to listen to the words that they are using, if they sound certain. And then there's the 48-hour test and red flag phrases. Words are cheap. They are used left and right. People don't say what they mean and they don't mean what they say. And so often people will say something to de-escalate the tension, the awkwardness, but the real answer is going to show up in what happens after. Once the pressure is off, about 48 hours later, and here's how it works. You have the direct conversation, like, where do you see this going? You don't analyze the words in isolation. You watch the next 48 hours. And that's why it's so important. I didn't know this in my marriage. I listened to the empty promises. I listened to all the words instead of watching his behavior and his patterns. Did their behavior shift at all to match what they said in that conversation? If they said something like, yeah, I see us going someplace together. I see us becoming more serious. I only want to date you. Okay. So within 48 hours, you should notice their behavior shift to match what they said. Or did everything just snap back to how it was in the beginning? This is a hard thing for you, especially for the anxious, preoccupied attachment style who desperately need reassurance, communication, updates, texting constantly. They don't like being alone. They have a hard time living and loving their own life. So they want to be a part of somebody else's life mentally, emotionally. And so it's harder for them to say, you know what, I'm noticing there's been no shift. It's the same thing. He's treating me the same he did 48 hours ago. So I'm going to take that as the information. That's the answer. What a real answer looks like, they said, I want this to be serious. So they would text more, they bring up plans, they start closing the loop on ambiguity instead of creating more of it. The shift is visible, it's not just verbal. But what a fake answer looks like, they said the right words in the moment, the words you wanted to hear, like, you are everything I've ever wanted in a woman. Like, you check off all the boxes. You are absolutely amazing. I love being with you. Yada, yada, yada. And 48 hours later, same sporadic texting, canceled plans or last minute plans, same vagueness. Don't be a fool. Do not be a fool. This is the work of personal growth. It's, you know that you're leveling up and you want more and you know that you deserve more and you just happen to be with somebody who does not feel the same. They are drifting through life, not taking it seriously, not being intentional. They don't have goals, especially relationship goals. And you just so happen to get stuck in this loop and sucked into this breadcrumbing dynamic. So it's time for you to have some freaking backbone and some mystery and say, you know what? There's no point in continuing this, really, because nothing about their actions changed. Only their words changed. They said what they think you wanted to hear, but only temporarily to manage your reaction. So the test isn't about catching them in a lie, the 48-hour test. It's about training yourself to trust behavior over language or words. Because words spoken under pressure are often just damage control. Listen to that. When you know you're having a heavy conversation with somebody, and I am an 8 on the Enneagram, trust is a really big thing. So if I know I'm going to have a hard conversation with somebody, my first thought is this person going to be honest with me? And it's very important for you to listen to the words that they choose, for you to watch their body language, their tone. I'm going to give you a list of red flag phrases to pay attention to with what they're actually doing. This is what they say. Let's just see where it goes. Oh my goodness. What they're actually doing is removing them from having to make a decision, keeping all the options on their side. I don't want to put a label on it. They're reframing avoidance as casual. So you feel high maintenance for wanting clarity. I know you've probably felt this before. You feel like you're high maintenance because you want clarity. That is so ridiculous. And if that person is causing you to feel high maintenance because you want clarity, you are in the wrong relationship and you are making excuses for yourself and you need to hightail it to the hills. Can we not have this conversation right now? I'd be like, they're trying to buy time without answering. Or another one, you know how I feel about you. Really? I'm not so sure I do. Can you remind me one more time, please? They're trying to be flattering, but it really doesn't say anything. Instead of giving you a concrete answer, they're giving you a vague feeling. I'm just not really a relationship type of person. That sounds like they have self-awareness, but they just don't want to have any accountability. And lastly, I don't believe in labels. I believe in energy and just like, let's just have fun together. Let's just see where it goes. Let's not be so serious. That is aesthetic language, taking the place for a real answer. It sounds deep, but it literally means nothing. So that's why it's important to read the answer, not the excuse. For example, you ask, where do you see this going? And they say, honestly, I really like you. I just don't want to rush anything. Okay. That's code for, I don't want to be accountable and I just kind of want the benefits and not be committed, because what if somebody better comes along? Because you clearly don't have their full attention. The excuse, or what it sounds like, is they're being cautious and being mature. Like, I honestly like you, I just don't want to rush anything. But the answer, what they're actually saying without saying it, is no timeline, no commitment to figure it out, not rushing with no destination, is just staying still. Here's an example of reading the answer, not the excuse, if you're in a situationship. So you ask, where do you see this going? And they say, honestly, I really like you. I just don't want to rush anything. The excuse, what it sounds like, is they're being cautious and mature. But the answer, what it actually is, what they're actually saying without saying it, is they don't want a timeline and they don't want a commitment. Another example is you ask, are we exclusive? And they say, I mean, I'm not seeing anyone else right now. And the excuse is, it sounds like a yes, you are exclusive. But what they're really saying without saying it is right now is doing all the work in that sentence. Those two words, right now, is telling you it's a status update, not a commitment. When somebody better comes along that is going to get their full attention, then they will no longer be exclusive. And another example, what are we building toward? They say, do we have to define everything? Can't we just enjoy it? Can't we just see where it's going? It sounds spontaneous and present focused and fun, right? But the answer that they're really saying without saying it, they're redirecting the question back at you as if wanting clarity is the problem. A classic reframe to make you feel high maintenance and demanding. So if you feel like you have to interpret their answer, it's not an answer. Something like, yes, I'm all in. I want what you want. It doesn't need decoding. If you're in a situationship, clarity is what you need, and it's not rejection. It's respect for yourself and for them. And I know a situationship probably feels confusing when you're in it, but it's not really. You're just afraid of what happens when it stops being one. You are too afraid to ask the question that you need to ask. It's time to ask. So, how to leave a situationship? Number one is you need to get honest before you get out. Be honest about what you're getting out of that situationship, that dynamic. Are you getting the attention, the validation? Are you avoiding being alone? Are you avoiding boredom? Or are you getting a fantasy of who they could be, which is dating their potential? You can't leave something until you know what it's been giving you. Otherwise, you're just going to find another version of it with another face. And so you have to actually be honest with yourself, have a real conversation with yourself first before you have it with them. What have you actually been getting from this situation that you're in? Step two, stop negotiating with yourself. The exhausting part of situationships isn't the other person, it's the internal debate on loop in your head. Maybe if I just wait a little longer, maybe he's just going through something. So the decision to leave has to be made once and for all outside the relationship and not re-debated, re-litigated every single time they text you back. The best thing to do would be to block them. It's not immature. It's you are moving on and you're no longer giving them access to your life anymore. You've done that. Nothing has come of it. You're moving on. Step three, skip the ultimatum, skip the audit. I know this is for me is so tempting. I mean, if I do this not in a situationship, but with other things in my life, you don't need to build a case and list all their offenses and how they did you wrong and get them to admit their wrongdoing. Situationships don't end because you win an argument or you prove something. They end because you stop showing up for their ambiguity and their vagueness. So a short, clear statement is enough and moving on, and you don't keep going back and forth. I'm looking for something defined and real. And this isn't it. So I'm not going to continue. I'm going to exit. That's it. Short and sweet. Step 4 and 5 combined. So step 4, people, we are not slow fading. We are not ghosting. That's immature. We are going to send one clean, honest message, which is going to close the loop faster than ghosting. Because if you don't, you're just going to restart the cycle in a few weeks. After they started hanging out with someone they got bored of, they're reaching back out to you because you gave them space. And they're going to say, I haven't heard from you in a while. And you're like, yeah, it's because I moved on. But then you're going to get back into that loop because you left the door cracked open. So no more of that. And step 5, remove the access points. This is the practical part that a lot of people skip, but you've got to mute, you've got to unfollow, you've got to delete the thread, the photos. Take a break from the places that you would run into them. This is so important if you want to see results. Step 6. I love this one. Not because a lot of people blow it here, but because once you understand psychology and why people do what they do, then you will not be duped by what's going to happen next. And that is many situationships escalate right when you pull back, especially if you're a dismissive avoidant. When you lean in, they pull back. When you pull back, they lean in. And suddenly they're available and they're communicative and they're even talking about the future. Do not be duped. That's not evidence that you made a mistake. It's often a response to losing access to you. It's not a genuine change. And you can judge it by the 48-hour test. Does the shift, the change hold up? Or does it fade the second you start to re-engage? It's so interesting. The second you start to re-engage, it will go back to how it used to be. Step 7, this is about grieving the fantasy because that's what it was. You're not grieving the person because they really didn't give you that much. They didn't offer you that much. They didn't want to commit. They didn't really want to be available. They just wanted the benefits, the physical touch, maybe the money, maybe to prevent boredom. You've got to grieve the fantasy because a lot of pain after a situationship isn't about who they actually were because they really weren't that much to you if you think about it. It's mourning who you'd hope they'd become. And naming that distinction helps the grief make more sense and pass faster. Do not suppress it. Bring it up and say, hey, I really wanted it to look like this, but it wasn't possible. So I'm going to accept it. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to learn from the situation. I'm not going to make the same mistake I did last time. And I'm moving on. Step 8, and the last one, you got to refill the time. You can't white knuckle it through the pain, because the hardest hours are the ones that you used to fill with checking your phone, waiting, wondering. That's what a situationship is like. You have to have something ready to fill that space. People, plans, projects, passions, hobbies, whatever it is. Do not just stay in bed, stay in your house, flipping through Netflix. You have to move on with your life. And maybe this is a sign that it's time for you to rebuild your life, actually, to something interesting that you enjoy without anybody else in it. That wraps up this episode of being in a situationship. I really hope that this was helpful. If you're in one, it's time to depart. It's time to exit. You've wasted enough time. They have fooled you enough. It's like you need to be with somebody who says, I know where I'm going. I want you to be a part of my life. You don't have to ask any questions. You don't have to wonder. You don't have to have the hard conversation, because they're already having it with you. I would like you to go get some wind in your hair, meaning push yourself outside your comfort zone, doing something uncomfortable. Go play pickleball, go eat alone, go watch music alone, go to an aquarium by yourself. I love aquariums. And design your life, because if you don't design it, somebody else is going to do it and you won't like the way it looks. Until next week, aloha.